Hey, John. I'm reading this on behalf of John, who's a good friend of Dad's. I really didn't know Ken until I tried out for the 1978 Australian box lacrosse team. They was to travel to Canada and play demonstration games against Canadian teams in Edmonton at the Edmonton Commonwealth Games. I only knew of him by reputation as a very aggressive defence player for Williamstown. He was extremely tough and aggressive, and while his opponents hated him and what he did to them, their partners couldn't understand or believe that to be true, as he was such a nice and funny character off the field. When we tried out for the team in early 1978, it was obvious that there was a very serious side to him. A very disciplined person who didn't wax and wane for individual players. He treated everyone the same, set very high standards, and did I say he was disciplined? I recall one Sunday morning training session where most of the team had arrived for 9 a.m. training, but Ken didn't start until the final couple of stragglers arrived. When we trained for a couple of hours, after which he summoned us all together, explained that when he said training started at 9 a.m, that everyone was expected to be ready to train at 9 a.m. And as a consequence, he then made the latecomers run laps for 30 minutes while the rest of us watched on with amusement and satisfaction. His parting words, which I remember to this day, was, "Punctuality is a sign of good manners." He always used that. We didn't have any trouble with punctuality after that, and he made it clear what his standards were and look out if he didn't meet them. I, like most, liked this approach. You knew where you stood and you were expected to perform to your best and give all you had at every training session or game. The 2 weeks in Canada were quite gruelling. We trained and played every day, including the days we were travelling on the bus. Once on the bus, Ken was a lot more relaxed, and his witty humour and competitiveness in other areas came out. Did I say he was competitive? He was competitive at cards and any other game being played. He was even competitive with jokes. If he told a good one, he'd have another one to match it, followed by that infectious drawn-out laugh. When we arrived in Vancouver, we were shocked at the protective equipment that they wore and how hard they threw the ball, which was quite a lot harder than a field lacrosse ball. So when he hit a goalkeeper on the leg or shoulder, it was splat. We immediately went downtown for equipment, in particular the two goalkeepers, but couldn't get all we needed, so we enlisted the help of our liaison officer, Rick Richards, to get some equipment for us. The following night, at a salmon cookout, I hate salmon and was throwing up for 3 days, Rick told us unfortunately he couldn't source the equipment we desperately needed. But never mind, he would keep looking. Never mind, what about my protection, said I and the other goalkeeper. I went to Ken immediately to alert him to this major issue. But by this time, Ken was well and truly having a merry time under the grip of the grape. And when I told him the disastrous news, he started laughing, put me in a headlock and nearly broke my neck. I didn't bother Ken anymore with my piddling issues. I didn't need any more injuries. The other funny story following that evening was that Ken was being taken home by his billet and his wife. It was dark and raining, and Ken, being vertically challenged, sitting in the back, was asking all sorts of questions of his host, who, to his horror, every time Ken asked a question, would turn around and talk to Ken and not concentrate on the road. Ken became so anxious and not seeing what was ahead, said to his host, "For God's sake, will you keep your eyes on the road?" To which his host turned and said, "My wife is driving." It was a very hard 2 weeks in Canada, physically. Very demanding, everyone finished up very sore, some with a few breaks and stitches. But Ken created and maintained a healthy and harmonious team spirit throughout the tour, cracking a gag when the moment was right, cracking the whip when it was needed. He was a highly principled man, never stepped away from an opinion that he believed in, said what he meant, but was also a sensitive and supportive man when it was needed. He was a good coach, but he was more importantly a good leader. He set a path and standards, and as long as everyone stayed on that path and maintained those standards, life was good. And despite the hardship, the team overall came away from that trip with nothing but admiration for Ken and his leadership skills. And after it was all over, that dry sense of humour and cheeky wit and banter appeared. One thing I do recall years later was that regardless of where National Lacrosse Championships were, Ken, through his role as National Sales Manager, just happened to have appointments or meetings at that location and just happened to be able to spare time to attend the games and after-match entertainment, usually with one of his disinterested sales staff tagging along to make up numbers to justify his attendance. I have stayed close to Ken since 1978. He's been to every one of my major birthdays and vice versa. His birthday, I think, is December, but he always used to joke that he had his birthdays in winter so he can get a 10% discount. I also remember a funny line from Ken when we were organising a golf day, and I thought we might be able to auction a few hickory sticks and raise some money. Ken, quick as a flash, said, "I think I have one that still has a bit of Alan Gandy's skin on it. That would be worth a bit." He was dealt a tough hand, with his health 6 years ago. He endured it bravely like he did lacrosse. He was never one to complain or moan. He would always turn up, but it was getting tougher in his last 6 months, and seeing such a robust, strong man become so thin and wearied as I did in May of this year, I was concerned for him. I knew things must be bad if you can't drink wine or eat good food. Some people have an impact on us all. In lacrosse, people like Mel Taylor and Ken Read had a big impact on me, and they still do today. They are lighthouses to guide you through your life. You're at peace now, Ken, and no pain, save a few corny gags and a nice glass of red for me when I finally join you. Thanks for the friendship and the lessons in life. You made a difference. Vale, Ken, Skennen, which is go in peace in the Iroquois language. That was great, John. Thank you very much.